My name is Parminder Singh. I'm a medical oncologist at Mayo Clinic. My area of interest and expertise is in genitourinary oncology, which deals with cancers of prostate, bladder cancer, kidney cancer, and testicular cancer in men. So let's talk about castrate-resistant prostate cancer. You may hear terms like castrate-refractory prostate cancer or castrate-resistant prostate cancer. What your physician is referring to is that the cancer is now not responding to androgen manipulation, which essentially means that we are suppressing testosterone production in your body, which is expected to control your cancer from progressing. But now, despite that maneuver, the cancer has started to grow, and we have to move on to more aggressive treatment strategies. These aggressive treatment strategies usually comprise of newer anti-androgen drugs, which are drugs which target androgen pathway or the testosterone pathway, or may include chemotherapy, radiation, or new types of immunotherapy. These medicines essentially block testosterone pathway with different mechanisms. One of the mechanisms is by blocking the production of testosterone in adrenal glands, which is a small gland which sits on top of the kidney and makes small amount of testosterone. Xtandi, on the other side, has a very high affinity for what we call as androgen receptor, which means there is a small protein which is on the surface of the cancer cells, which catches the testosterone, which then triggers growth and spread of the cancer. This drug goes and attaches to this protein such that testosterone cannot bind to that protein anymore, which leads to cancer control. These newer medicines have side effects. They may affect liver, they may induce seizures, cause a lot of fatigue, hot flashes, and also are very expensive. The chemotherapy as an option, we look for patients who have visible disease on a CT and bone scan, which means you have castrate-resistant metastatic prostate cancer, which basically means we have evidence of metastases on your scan, versus patients who have non-metastatic castrate-resistant prostate cancer, which is a group where the PSA starts to go up, but there is no evidence of cancer on their scans. We prefer to use chemotherapy for the group who has clear evidence of metastases. The chemotherapy drugs which we use for prostate cancer are broadly two. One is called docetaxel. The other one is called cabazitaxel. Both of these drugs blocks the dividing mechanism in the cancer cells. The cancer cells require certain proteins when it is dividing to separate the DNA into the sibling cells. That dividing protein mechanism is blocked by these chemotherapies, leading to cell death. As you may know, that chemotherapy have traditional side effects like nausea, vomiting, hair loss, fatigue, loss of appetite. These are commonly seen with these medicines. In addition to that, we also see suppression of the immune system, which may lead to patients catching some infections, which may require hospitalization also. Once we use these drugs to control the disease, this cancer may get suppressed for a long time, and we may continue to watch the patients by doing subsequent CT scans or bone scans or blood work to see how they are responding or how the disease is controlled. Once the cancer stops to respond to chemotherapy, let's talk about chemotherapy versus androgen deprivation therapy in prostate cancer. This is a very hot topic of discussion among patients, whether the first treatment should be chemotherapy or should be androgen deprivation. Chemotherapy was studied in prostate cancer in patients who had not seen any treatment before, such that these are newly diagnosed metastatic disease, versus androgen deprivation alone. And when these patients were followed on the clinical trial, we saw that patients who got chemotherapy with androgen deprivation therapy, they lived on an average over a year and a half more than the patients who got androgen deprivation therapy alone, which brought chemotherapy upfront into the treatment of prostate cancer. However, when we teased into the results of these clinical trials, we found that patients who had high volume disease, which is like 5 or more sites of metastases, were the ones who were predominantly benefiting from this treatment strategy. Subsequent to the publication of these results, other set of trials came out looking at newer anti-androgens in the same setting of a newly diagnosed metastatic disease patients. In those clinical trials, using second generation anti-androgens like Zytiga or Xtandi also showed that patients who received them earlier on did very well. Since we did not have any clinical trial which was directly comparing the second generation anti-androgens versus the chemotherapy, it is not very clear what treatment strategy is better for a certain patient. However, in clinics, when we are taking care of the patient, we do make some clinical judgment based on how aggressive the tumor is. If we see that patient's tumor has higher risk features like very high Gleason score or showing neuroendocrine features or small cell features, we know that androgen deprivation therapy may not work for very long. In those patients, we get inclined towards using chemotherapy upfront rather than later. In other group of patients or patients who are elderly may not tolerate chemotherapy very well, we proceed with using second generation anti-androgens with Lupron as our first treatment strategy. Or patient has any severe side effects, then we move on to other subsequent therapeutic options. One of the options is called Sipuleucel T, which is a type of immunotherapy. In this strategy, we take out patients' own immune cells by using a machine called as plasmapheresis. Then these cells are sent to the company and they do a special type of processing through which the cells are then made to go after the cancer cells, and then these cells are then reinfused into the patient so that the patient may develop immune response towards their cancer. The immunotherapy works well for patients who have low volume disease. At the same time, it doesn't affect the PSA progression, which means the rate of increase in PSA, or doesn't change the CT or bone scan. So it is difficult to interpret if the treatment is working for you or not. And also these medicines are very, very expensive. Not everybody benefit from immunotherapy either. The other strategy we use in this situation is something called as radium-223, which is a radioactive isotope. This isotope likes to go and bind to the bone where there is cancer cells making colonies in your bone. And once it binds there, it emits radiation, causing the cancer to die around that area. Such that now we can give you so-called radiation intravenously, and this radiation will go and attach to the cancer areas and try to cause cancer cells to die. Unfortunately, these medicines will not work in areas where the cancer has spread to soft tissue instead of the bone. So we like to give these medicines only to patients who have bone metastases. If you have lymph node metastases or cancer spreading to the liver or the lung, then you may not be a suitable candidate for this type of treatment strategy. After we have given radium-223 to our patients, the disease may shrink, the PSA may go down, or in some patients the disease may not progress for some time. During that time, we just serially watch patients' PSA and scans to see if the disease is progressing. At some point in time, the cancer will start to grow back again. We look for genetic mutations in patients' own DNA, which is called as germline mutations, or patients' cancer's DNA. We get that DNA by doing a biopsy, or we can also do some of the testing these days based on blood tests, where we can look for mutations in the blood from the circulating tumor's DNA of the cancer cells. If these tests show us some information that the tumor has certain mutations towards which we may have certain new medications, we then like to give them. For example, there is a class of drug called as PARP inhibitors, which are used if patient's DNA or patient's tumor DNA has so-called BRCA mutations, or other mutations like DNA damage repair mutations. These are certain mutations which make the cancer susceptible to these medicines, and so we then prescribe these medicines, which are in a form of a pill, and patients can take these medicines which may work for some time, and they can continue to take as long as these medicines are working. These medicines also have peculiar side effects, including some degree of bone marrow suppression, nausea, vomiting, skin rash, fatigue, but most of the patients will tolerate these medicines for a certain duration of time. Again, these medicines do not promise any cure. We are looking for controlling the disease for as long as possible. Many patients have questions regarding treatments prior to their radiation or their surgery. They feel that any kind of intervention like chemotherapy may help improve the outcomes of their surgery or radiation. Recent data and previous data has shown that that may not be true. We do offer androgen deprivation therapy in combination with radiation therapy in high-risk patients, but the treatment strategy has not shown any benefit prior to prostatectomy, which is removal of the cancer itself. So in our clinical practice, we proceed with surgery if the patient is a good surgical candidate, directly without giving any chemotherapy or hormone therapy. And in patients who we feel we are offering radiation and they have high-risk features, then we offer them androgen deprivation therapy from somewhere from 6 months to 2 years based on the risk factors with radiation. Side effect management on prostate cancer therapy is one of the critical areas we focus a lot. We want to make sure patients' treatment is effective, not only effective, but also they are able to tolerate their treatment very well. One of the commonest side effects which men get with prostate cancer treatment is sexual dysfunction and also hot flashes, mood swings, and weight gain. We use different medications to control these symptoms. However, control of all these symptoms may not be possible. We try to encourage our patients to do exercise and meditation, which may help control some of the vasomotor symptoms which patients get with these medicines. When we go on to chemotherapy, nausea, fatigue, hair loss, and taste change become very prominent. Patients may also get allergic reactions. And we use a lot of pain medicine, nausea medicines, very strong nausea medicines, allergy medicines to control these symptoms. Our goal is to make the treatment as easy as possible for our patients. One of the other medication, the immunotherapy, Sipuleucel-T, which is used in a very select group of patients with prostate cancer, is in general very well tolerated and doesn't have many side effects. Most of the patients may have some infusion-related reactions like chills and rigors or fevers, which gets alleviated by using Tylenol or Benadryl. Some patients may also have some rash, which also recovers with local symptom management. Overall, this treatment is very well tolerated. Prostate cancer management is multidisciplinary management. As soon as somebody is diagnosed with prostate cancer, they should try to involve a urologist, a medical oncologist, and radiation oncologist to help create a multidisciplinary approach for the treatment of their cancer, which can promise better outcomes or improved outcomes on a long-term basis. Patients may require support from a urologist and a medical oncologist if they have metastatic disease to begin with. And so involving all three providers early on in their care will go a long way in improving their patient's outcome with this cancer. Prostate cancer is one of the commonest cancers in the US. Over 150,000 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer. As the treatments are getting better, patients are living longer and longer. And treatments are also getting better in terms of side effect profiles. So there's a lot of optimism and hope for patients with prostate cancer, and the goal here is to achieve a disease state which we call as chronic disease, where we can control this disease for a long time and patients can continue with their lives as normal as possible. If the tumor continues to progress after that, the patient may clinically deteriorate and further therapy may become very difficult. At this point, we engage our palliative care teams into the care of the patient and make sure the treatment goals are discussed, and we try to make the patient comfortable, because our final goal is usually that the treatment should not be worse than the disease, and patients should be able to spend more time with the family, especially at this juncture. Prostate cancer can be inherited, such that patients who have family members who have prostate cancer, they may be at a higher risk of developing prostate cancer, or they may put their children at higher risk for prostate or breast cancer. And so in patients who develop prostate cancer, we have started to screen for germline mutations, which are mutations which are in the patient's own DNA. And also we test for mutations in the cancer DNA. The rationale for doing these two tests, which are both coming from the patient, is that certain mutations may occur only in the cancer cells and not in the normal cells. Whereas if the mutation is present in the normal cells, then that mutation could have been transmitted to the children of the patient. These tests give us an idea if certain treatment strategies would work for the patient, or may even give us an idea on the risk for other cancers. Prostate cancer treatment has been changing very rapidly. There are many new drugs which have been approved recently in different clinical stages of this disease. One of the stages of the disease, which we called as non-metastatic castrate-resistant prostate cancer, which saw a flurry of drugs called apalutamide or darolutamide being approved in this space in recent times. These drugs also work through different androgen inhibition pathways and help control the disease for a long time. The duration of response with these medicines does depend if the patient had exposure to Zytiga or Xtandi, which are other drugs in this class of medication. And patients who had not seen Zytiga and Xtandi before may respond to these medicines for a long time. The side effects of these medicines are pretty similar with Zytiga and Xtandi, which causes hot flashes, weight gain, cardiac toxicity, falls, or seizure-like activity. The other new medications which are coming in clinical trial, one of them is lutetium-177, which is showing a lot of promise in prostate cancer and is being investigated in prostate cancer, which is castrate-resistant and metastatic to bone and soft tissue, and may get approved in near future. There are many other clinical trials which are ongoing in prostate cancer, and patients can access these trials through clinicaltrials.gov website, which gives a listing of various clinical trials in prostate cancer, also gives information to statewide distribution and also phone numbers and contact information of the PIs, which are the principal investigators of the trials in their local institutions. Patients are always encouraged to explore clinical trials as they provide opportunity to get access to new drugs which are not approved yet and may help control the disease for even longer durations.